Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I wanted to look at some of the Beatles and Queen records that I've managed to acquire in the past few months and try to make an assessment as to which band's compilations were done better, from my very limited personal perspective, of course. Now, before we start, I want to make a few things clear. I love both bands and their music greatly. I am probably a bit of a Beatles fan more, but I would never ever compare the quality of music between the two, as not only I love both, but it also seems rather stupid since each did their own thing and had their own masterpieces and their own styles. I will not and cannot compare between every single compilation of each band out there, as there are so many variations. I will stick to what I consider to be the main ones for each, and in terms of variants, of course, I will focus on what I have. Most of the items I will cover, I did manage to get on vinyl, but for one I will refer to using the CD version, but also referencing the vinyl version as well. What I will tend to use as criteria for comparing these and maybe sort of ranking them at the end are the following. How does each compilation manage to encapsulate the group's career and provide a good picture of their best and most essential musical products? I'll also be looking at the quality of each pressing itself, and finally at the track lists in rapport to what I personally would have liked to be on them. Now, to give you a heads up, the compilations I will cover are for Queen Greatest Hits, more recently known also as Greatest Hits 1, then Greatest Hits 2, and Queen Plus Greatest Hits 3. While for the Beatles we'll cover the 1962 to 66, 67 to 70, the Red and Blue albums with the original versions, but the 2014 analog pressings. Then again the Red and the Blue albums, but the 2023 expanded tracklist and new mixed versions. And another compilation set that might be unexpected for some that I will reveal later in the video. So, if you're in the least bit curious about all of these, stick around. Okay, so the first ones, like I said, that we're going to be looking at, I'm going to just take them chronologically, basically in the order in which they were released the first time. So we're going to start with Beatles Red and Blue compilations, 1962 to 66, also known as the Red Album, and 1967 to 70, also known as the Blue Album. I mean, we looked at these before on the channel. I put the link down in the description when we built the Beatles stereo analog vinyl set, or collection, if you will. So you know what we have on here with these 2014 editions. Now, like I said, I was going to talk more about the track listings themselves and how I think these are covering the respective band's career by including the most essential pieces of music. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things that have been talked along the years about the Red and the Blue albums, and clearly they hold a special place in a lot of Beatles fans' hearts, especially second, third generations, because many of them were brought onto the Beatles by these compilations. And actually I can say the same thing. I realized quite late in my life that actually it was a copy on cassette of the Red album that was my first connect with the Beatles music. And I told this story as well. That's another video that I can link on in the description, the story of how I came into contact with the Beatles. But you know, I only found out more recently that it was actually this, you know, one of a cassette or European cassette of the Red album. But it still counts, right? It's still, you know, the Red album is still what brought me in to the Beatles. So this is why I understand that these are critical for a lot of Beatle fans. And that they grew up with them and with the track listing and the sequence of the track. So totally understand why this would be a very important release. And from my perspective, it is a great one. So not only does this 2014 version sound very good, but just the way that the compilation is built, I largely feel it's great. Now, there are some songs which I personally would have wished they were on here, like personal favorites of mine, and some of them were included in the 2023 new version. But of course, when we are talking strictly about the original ones, which were re-edited up to a few years ago, we are only talking about their respective track lists. And I do think that from the most critical Beatles songs that are missing from these compilations were Tomorrow Never Knows and Dear Prudence, and I think also Blackbird. I think all of these have been added to the 2023, so they kind of fixed that. There are other favorites of mine that I would have hoped would have gotten on this kind of compilation, but they didn't. So, you know, it is as good as it could have been at that moment. I do think, you know, there are a couple of songs in here that, okay, they're not my favorites. I'm not sure there are any Beatles fan favorites, but, you know, the inclusion of the Ballad of John and Yoko and Old Brown Shoe, I'm not sure. I mean, I know there was kind of parts of singles and so on, but I'm not sure that they were so successful as, or so beloved as, and essential as Beatles tracks. But maybe they were. I guess I don't want to get into disputes about that. It just seems like those are odd ones to include when something like Blackburn or Dear Prudence was excluded. So yeah, these are the Red and Blue albums, the original track listing of them, and in this pressing from 2014. By the way, can confirm this is an excellent pressing. It sounds great. I heard almost no distortion. Maybe the songs that already kind of had it in certain places still have it, but I haven't heard any significant distortion. The vinyl is quite quiet. Of course, it came a little bit dusty, but I managed to clean it. So, you know, these are very good pressings of the original Red and Blue albums. The next point was to discuss the 2023 version of these albums, but we will do that at the end. So I'm still going to take it chronologically, and I'm going to move to the next chronological release from all of these sets, and we'll get back to the 2023 Red and Blue albums at the end. So the next compilation that I wanted to talk about, which many people might not consider to be a simple compilation, and maybe they are not thinking about it when they would do this kind of a listing. Probably a lot of people would expect me to talk about a collection of Beatles oldies, but if I said I was going to take them chronologically, that would immediately be eliminated because it was released while they were still together, as opposed to the Red and Blue albums, which came out in '73. So the actual compilation, what I consider to be a compilation that I want to talk about, is this. The Beatles box from Liverpool by World Records, released first in 1980 in the UK. Then it was, of course, released throughout the 80s in other countries as well, with different degrees of quality of the pressings and so on. I think it was also taken over by Reader's Digest in some countries. And I consider this to be one of the best, if not the best, collection of Beatles compilation records that exists. And I will explain a little bit what I mean, but about this one specifically. So this one is, like I said, a UK version from 1980, is one of the ones that could be the best in terms of sound quality. The most, if not all, of the discs in here, you would have Harry Moss's, initials on the run out. So basically, they were mastered quite well, and they were cut quite well. The price that you can buy this at, currently the minimum price that you can find at least on Discogs is around 70-80 euro for potentially very good plus box sets. The last time I checked, there weren't any that were considered, at least for the records, to be below very good plus, but maybe some have appeared. But I think 70 euro is the smallest price that you could pay to get one in a fairly good condition. One thing that I want to say about this, and we're going to open it up and just look at it a little bit, is that in terms of the quality of the pressings, these are considered to be pretty good quality. I did notice that the bass on them is a little bit thin, but if you have a system where you can tweak that, it'll definitely help, and the quality of the sound that you will get will be amazing. At least for some of these discs, it is amazing. Now, I bought this, of course, off of Discogs. It's supposed to be near mint. The discs are mostly near mint, but there are some which have a little bit more surface noise than I would like, even after being thoroughly cleaned, of course. The box, for me, it's in a good condition. But the problem with this box, although I kind of like the look of it, the style of it, it is quite thin. And this also does not allow me to put any protection on the discs themselves inside, so I have to keep them the way they are, or I have to remove them completely from the box and put them in separate outer covers and then keep the box empty or something. I tried to put some protective sleeves on the actual outer sleeves of the discs and put them in, and it just wouldn't fit right. They would be, filling in the box too much. Opening the box is always kind of a little bit of a trouble because it opens with a hinge sort of from here, and I think that's not a long way from starting to get removed. And also taking the discs out, and especially when I put those protective sleeves on, it's a little bit problematic because you cannot reach all of the discs through this here, and you see already it's kind of cracked. So in time it just gets damaged more. Now about the rest of the aspect of this box, inside you have the index in here, right? So you can see all of the tracks on all of the discs. If you take the discs out, and I will do this for you, they're all laminated. People do not appreciate the style of this disc, but I kind of like it, to be honest. They found sort of a style and they applied it, quite consistently. All of them have these sleeve notes by Hugh Marshall. Oh, and by the way, they're all mixing, of course, tracks from all of the albums, and it is the most, in my opinion, the most comprehensive collection of Beatles songs in a sort of compilation box set like this one. So even the new version of the 2023 Red and Blue, I don't think is coming close. It comes closer than others, but I think this is still the most comprehensive one and the most expansive one that goes across their entire career as a group and picks, for the most part, the most important songs to be included. And some of them, of course, are covers as well, so you have a whole type of material that you would want to listen to. So this first disc, has songs from Please Please Me and With the Beatles. And of course, in all of them, there will be intertwined the songs from the albums with songs from EPs and especially singles. Right, the second one has a bunch of singles, right, and the songs from A Hard Day's Night. Okay. Then the third one has songs from Beatles for Sale, and it already starts to move on towards Help. And you can see it's also kind of including a version of Help, of a picture from the movie. Okay. The fourth one continues with some songs from Help, because you have Yesterday in here, and then it goes into Rubber Soul. It also has Day Tripper and We Can Work It Out included, among others. Right. The next one includes a few tracks from Revolver and a few tracks that were sort of singles. So you have Paperback Writer and Rain, and then you have Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever. This is a very strong disc with these four songs from these two singles, Paperback Writer and Penny Lane. And then you have a hefty representation of Rubber Soul, of Revolver, and it's definitely, it was superior to the representation of Revolver from the Red and the Blue albums, right? The sixth disc, Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band, you have some songs from that album, as well as from the Magical Mystery Tour. The seventh one, and see, it becomes more and more difficult for me to pull these out without damaging the box. We have a few more singles, and we have White Album being represented. It's represented quite well. I mean, almost the entire, except for the Hello Goodbye and Lady Madonna, almost the entire disc is White Album related. There are some things which are missing as well from here, and we'll get to them in a few moments. But I like that it includes, for instance, Happiness is a Warm Gun. That's a nice touch. I like that song. And then the last one, of course, includes songs from Let It Be and Abbey Road. And one thing that I like about this one is that it concludes with Abbey Road, as it sort of should, right? Let It Be was recorded before, and it ends with The End and Her Majesty. So for me, it's a more conclusive journey that we go through these days, and you end with Abbey Road than the normal release order of the albums, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna put these back. Now, there are a few things I was mentioning as well that they are specific about this box, in the sense that not only it has these 8 discs and a huge array of songs, but also has some very special or specific mixes or versions of some of the songs that are on here. Like for instance, you have a second version of Across the Universe, which was produced by Phil Spector. You have a special version, a different version of All My Lovin', or of one of All You Need Is Love, which is the mono one. You have a different version of And I Love Her, which has 6 bars of acoustic guitar in the fade out instead of the 4 that are normal versions. You have a true stereo version of Baby You're a Rich Man, which was before this just found on the German Magical Mystery Tour LP. We saw it in one of the previous videos as well. And there are many other sort of variations of the tracks on this versus the normal tracks on the album. So, you know, it makes sense to kind of have this as a compilation because of the quality of the pressing of the sound, because of the very expansive track listing, and also because it has some special tracks. So I think it has multiple things going for it. For me, like I said, I managed to get this off of Discogs. Initially I thought it was a Nordic version, but thankfully it was actually the UK version. The one thing that I didn't like about these, like I said, a couple of the discs have a little bit more surface noise than I would like. But at the same time, discs 7 and 8 are warped. 8 more than 7 and 7 more than 6. 6 is just a little bit, I think. So technically it seems like this was stored somehow improperly, and so the discs on the bottom tended to get more warped. But otherwise, in very, you know, for me it's excellent condition. Now this also, I mean, is the most comprehensive one. It has way more songs than even the most recent Red and Blue, as I said. But it is missing some songs that I would have thought in such a comprehensive and full scale sort of you know, X-ray of the Beatles' career as a group would, you know, have made sense to be on this as well. Some of them are maybe covers, or just songs that I like. Maybe that's why I feel like it. Like for me, it seems like Anna and Baby It's You and even Till There Was You could have been included given all of the others that were included. But, you know, and for instance, for me, it's because I'm a fan of Rubber Soul, I really like Wait, and I'm always disappointed Wait isn't on any compilation. But in terms of the actual songs, in some of them that were missing also from the Red and Blue, you know, the absence of Tomorrow Never Knows and Dear Prudence and Blackbird, you know, is a little bit weird to me. And yes, I would have liked other songs to be in there, like Honey Pie and I Me Mine. I like those. But aside from those, you know, again, the absence of Oh Darling might be a surprise for some. And just because at least some of these songs that I mentioned have then been included on the Red and the Blue albums, or basically on the Blue album. So yeah, aside from that, this is an excellent box, and I do feel, and this is my opinion, that it does a better job at covering the Beatles' career as a group than the Red and Blue albums, even the most recent ones from 2023. Now, the next one that we're going to be looking at is Queen Greatest Hits, and the first disc that we're going to be looking at is this one. This is a German pressing, a German Sono press from 1981. It has the EMI Electrola sort of logo here. The reason why I wanted this, so this one can be found on Discogs for around €25 for a very good plus version. I didn't, so like, unlike for the Beatles, where I kind of studied the market before, with the Queen I didn't study that much, or what I did study was not conclusive to me. But the thing is, I wanted to get this Greatest Hits because it has a track listing that I like more. And I thought, okay, it's a German pressing, it should be good, right? The German pressing of Queen is from 1981, so it's all analog. There shouldn't be any problem. The only difference was that this is something else about Greatest Hits. So this was launched in 1981, and that's when the first Greatest Hits was launched, and then it was used and reissued across the world. And in many countries, the track listing was ever so slightly changed, with 1 or 2 songs being put on it or taken off, versus the UK original version. And this is one of those situations where the original track list is a little bit changed. And the one change that appealed to me, and for which I bought this in the first place, was the inclusion of Spread Your Wings, which is a song that I really, really like, and it's not on many other compilations. There were others that were more popular with this one that included also Under Pressure, because it had just been launched very recently. But this one includes Spread Your Wings, which I love. And all the other songs that it kept from the original I also love, so I thought this was the perfect compilation for me. German pressing, this should be fine, right? Well, no, because it turns out that including, 9 songs on one side, and then another 9 songs on the other side, which you have here, with the length of some of these Queen songs, you have like Bohemian Rhapsody and so on, is not a good idea for vinyl. So apparently you kind of get a loss at the quality and the dynamics. And to be honest, a lot of the songs on this disc, and it's only one disc, that's another thing, so they put all of this on only one record. Now they fixed that with the most recent one, and we'll get a look at it very soon. But it's just one disc, and it has a huge number of tracks. I didn't realize initially that this would be a problem, but apparently it is. So this disc looks decent inside. It doesn't look too scratched. It wasn't too dirty. I cleaned it properly, and it's still, the sound is a bit muddy, a bit distorted here and there. Some surface noise. It might be also the groove wear, but from what I got from other people, the chances of finding another copy of this that sounds really clear and nice like the albums would have sounded is very slim. So this is it, but it's nice enough, or it's playable. You have some portions of it that sound quite nice. And the fact that I still have Spread Your Wings for me is important. The cover I also liked. I like that it's a little bit minimalistic versus the original Greatest Hits, which had the group on the front and so on. This one I kind of like it with this sort of dark burgundy color and the gold, metal writing of the band of the Greatest Hits, right? So yeah, Greatest Hits, 1981, a German sono press. And now we're gonna go to the other version that I have, which is, and people are not gonna like this, I guess, but one of the most recent pressings of Greatest Hits. Of course, this one is based on the 2011 digital remaster. So obviously, what you have on the CD is mostly what you have here. I took it because it was really accessible, and I was kind of looking around which version of Greatest Hits should I get that sounds really, really good. And there were no good prospects, aside from some of the UK pressings, early pressings, which people said they are okay. And so I said, okay, let me just try this and see how it is. Now this one is of course on 2 discs, right? So they did that a while back, pressed on 180 gram vinyl, at least theoretically. And the way that they split the songs, it makes sense to not fill in a disc too much. It also has nice looking inner sleeves for the discs, which I'm gonna take out and show to you. Right, with the pictures of the singles for the songs that are included on each disc. And these are nice to see, and they have some words about each of them, so that's also a nice, I think, touch. Now the thing is, as you see, not holding the discs in these inner sleeves because they are cardboard and they will definitely damage the discs more than a normal sleeve would. So I have a poly inner sleeve that I'm using for them. This is the second one. And on the other side, we have Play the Game, We Will Rock You, and so on. So, again, in terms of this, the presentation is good. In terms of the track listing, because we were talking about Greatest Hits, the German one, and this one. So I do think that the track listing of Greatest Hits, just as it is here, is significant enough. It has, it covers pretty well the period between their start in 1981 when this was brought out the first time. I do think, and I do like, again, the track listing of this more because of Spread Your Wings specifically. So, if I ever would prefer, I would prefer that one. But in terms of the quality of sound, because that one sounds so bad, this one, even if it's based on the digital remaster of 2011, I do feel like it sounds good, just to be honest. There are a couple of songs that I always find weird on these days, which We Will Rock You, and especially We Are the Champions. I feel like sometimes the sound gets distorted there. But other than that, to me it sounds clear and nice. It's probably not on par with the actual albums from their original pressings or even the Greatest Hits from the UK, but for me it's good enough. Now, the one that I really, really love from all of these that I bought, especially for Queen, is this Greatest Hits 2 UK release from 1991. It is a gatefold. It looked quite nice when I got it. It was supposed to be, again, near mint, at least in terms of the discs. And it was sort of true. So I think that they were between very good, well, you know, an upper echelon of very good into near mint. But the one thing that I really appreciated for this, so first of all, you know, I really like, again, the minimalist cover with the monocolor and then this gold Queen logo, as well as their name and the Greatest Hits 2. I love the track lists. This is from their middle period, right? So at least from 1981 onwards. And of course it includes Under Pressure, which was sometimes included on the first one for some editions. And it goes up to and including Innuendo as an album. And I do love, I love every single song on this set. Maybe a couple of them, they're not my favorites necessarily, but I still like them, and all of the others I love. And the other good thing about this one was that it sounds quite amazing. So the sound is powerful, it's punchy, it's clear. They seem to be, you know, mastered and put on here, and sort of the vinyl's cut very well. So yes, this is a very, very good pressing of Greatest Hits. I'm not sure if this was in any way at that time, because it was already 1991, where digital was already a thing. If it, you know, worked with some digital masters or not, I'm not sure. Couldn't find that much information on it, but I know how it sounds, and it sounds amazing. Now, before we move to the next one, again talking about the track list, I think this one does a very good job of covering that period of their career, especially when they were moving towards more different sounds than the initial rock that they started with. So I guess this one, in combination with the first one in terms of track listings, as a blue and red album would do for the Beatles, they do a good job in encapsulating their career from their first album and until Innuendo inclusively. There are a few tracks which I was kind of surprised that they were missing from both. And I'll just give one example, which is Love of My Life. I then understood that actually Love of My Life was not such a big hit when it first came out through the album. But for me, especially because this one came out in 1991, I think that by then, at least through the virtue of, excuse me, to the virtue of the 1986 Live at Wembley concert, where that was, for me at least as a kid, when I was listening to that concert, that was a very special song that I always, you know, remembered afterwards. So I thought that maybe at that point, after those concerts, Love of My Life will also become a more popular song, but apparently not. And it also occurred to me that during the 90s, it did have a resurgence in popularity in some countries because of a commercial to a beer, which I forget which one it was, that used the song. And then I would at least have expected, if they would bring out another version of Greatest Hits or another album of Greatest Hits, they would at least include it there. But they didn't. And so the last one in this series for Queen is Queen Plus Greatest Hits 3. Now it's Queen Plus because, as you probably well know, or at least Queen fans will know, this includes a lot of songs that were not recorded in this version, of course, by the band in its full, with the full lineup, right? With Freddie Mercury, Brian May, John Deacon, and Roger Taylor. But rather, they have some of the songs on here, they were recorded after Freddie Mercury had died. Some of them from the concert that was in his honor, where, you know, you had like George Michael singing Somebody to Love, and you had Annie Lennox with David Bowie, and with the rest of Queen, of course, singing Under Pressure, and so on and so forth, right? And some of those songs are on here, and they are nice. Like this is a nice concert, and all of those guys that got invited, almost all, did a very good job at sort of bringing this tribute to Freddie Mercury. But, you know, it's really not Queen. Queen was with Freddie Mercury, in my perspective. You know, even if they continue with the band, and I went to one of their concerts a few years back, and I enjoyed it. it'll never be the same. You know, it's exactly like with the Beatles. You can have three Beatles trying to record stuff, and then have the fourth one, not be there, but just taking a recording of him and combine it, and it will still be a Beatles song. But with Queen, if you're using a completely different frontman or main vocalist, it is not the same, and it's a little bit different as well because even though there was a clear partnership in writing the songs and working together in Queen, and all of the members they kind of had their own songs there, and some of them that were great hits. It does seem like Freddie Mercury's persona was much bigger in Queen and emanating from Queen than it was than any one person would have been in the Beatles, where you did have Paul and John being kind of more front row, more front stage, but then George also kind of caught up near the end of their tenure, and Ringo had his own very appreciated personality, appreciated by the public. In Queen, really, Freddie was, I think, at the forefront of anyone's mind when they were thinking about Queen songs, or at least that was the case for me. So Queen Greatest Hits 3, or Queen Plus Greatest Hits 3, was released in 1999. This version that we have here is a UK limited edition version. It is also a numbered edition. You see mine has 9245. I'm not sure how many of them were printed, but I definitely see that it's not super often encountered. So if you're looking for a copy of this on Discogs, the cheapest ones that I saw were above 100 euro, a little bit above 100 euro for a very good plus. I got it from somebody from Romania at a very good price, to be honest. The discs did not look, maybe they look around very good, but they do sound very good plus to near mint in some places. So I was really, really happy to be able to get this, and it's pretty good condition. And one thing that is special about this also is that you'll see, because I received it with this sleeve, and I thought, okay, I'm taking it from this PVC sleeve and put it in a poly one. But then I realized that this sleeve is actually printed, and together with the sleeve of the record, it actually makes the now pretty well-known front picture of Queen Greatest Hits 3. So yeah, it's a nice touch, I won't lie, I like it, but it kind of forces you to keep this sleeve, otherwise if it gets damaged, you won't have the same visual of the front of the album. Now, just going to take it out for a little while. On the back, of course, you have the track listing. And again, one of the things that I didn't really like about this, or not that, I do like it as a compilation, because it brings forward some of Freddie Mercury's solo songs that I really like, so kind of that makes it worth it. Plus a couple of the Queen songs that were excluded from the other compilations, right? That maybe should have been, to a certain extent, they could have been included, like Princess of the Universe. That was one that I kind of always liked, and maybe even These Are the Days of Our Lives, which is a very iconic song for Queen because it was the last video that Freddie had filmed before his death. And it also, like I said, it has some songs that I really like that Freddie performed on his own, or in duets. Like we have Barcelona with Montserrat Caballé, which is a very nice touch to have that. But in terms of this being a Queen third compilation that kind of fills in their period together until Freddie died, I don't think this is it. I think this was kind of, I wouldn't say it was a cash grab, but it's not really encapsulating of Beatles' career. It's more some of the tribute stuff that they did afterwards, some of the solo songs that Freddie did, and some of the solo songs that the other guys did, which I was never super aware of, to be honest. They are nice songs, don't get me wrong, but I just was never super aware of them. And so I don't feel like this is a good representation of Queen's career. It's a very partial representation of a few pieces and of the solo ones. To me, I would see it a little bit disconnected, if you will, from the rest of the greatest hits. Now, this is about it for Greatest Hits 3, or Queen Plus Greatest Hits 3. We do have the inner sleeves here, both of them, the cardboard ones. There's quite a nice design. and you'll see the pictures that are representative for the songs, for the performances on the back. Here we have Freddie with the filming of These Were the Days of Our Lives. And, you know, otherwise it's okay. I'm not keeping the discs in these sleeves, of course, not to scratch them, so I keep them in these kinds of inners. But the one thing that I do want to say, and I'm just going to take one of the discs out just for you to see it, and I do kind of hate that. So this one has a normal sort of label, nothing special, but you do have the track listing on it for that side. This one, you know, no track listing for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure who thought of this. And the other disc is as well is the same too. So it has, you know, the track listing on one side, and on the other side, it just has a picture of the band, and you don't know exactly what's on there. You need to look at the sleeve. And the last point today, of course, will be the Beatles Red and Blue albums from 2023. Now, for those I don't have the vinyl yet, I do have this CD set. Of course, I'm just gonna show this and just look at it and talk a little bit about it from my perspective. So I do think that this is a great expansion of the track list of the original one. I do think that they made, you know, they brought justice to some of the albums and some of the songs, you know, including a lot of the additional songs from the White Album, especially from Revolver. I did like the sound, like I said, even of the CDs, and people are saying that the vinyl is even better in terms of the sound. Of course, there are some songs here and there that might not have the best quality of sound, or that fans do feel strongly about and not liking these versions or whatever, the mixes. But from my perspective, this sounded very good to me, and if people say that the vinyl is sounding even a little bit better, then that can be only an improvement. So just bottom line, and I gave some opinions on this a few weeks ago when this was just you know, first launched and I got it. Can link that as well in the description if you want to check it out. But again, it's a very good compilation. I think that they expanded properly on it. There are just a couple of songs that I would have wished they would have been on here, and it would have been just perfect track listing for me. Again, I think like the sound is very good. So for me, this compilation does a better job than the original one to at least cover the Beatles' career as a group in terms of their most essential and influential songs. So if I were to make a ranking, in my opinion, of which of these compilation albums I feel like did better, you know, did justice to the band, and also in the pressing itself, which ones are the best quality ones or the best sounding ones to me, the last place would definitely go to the German Sono press of Greatest Hits for Queen from 1981. I explain, I like the track listing, I like how it looks. The sound is not good at all, at least from my perspective. The following one on the list for me is Queen plus Queen Greatest Hits 3. Again, I kind of like the pressing as well. It doesn't sound bad. I do like the packaging. It's interesting, at least. But the track listing, I don't think has anything to do with Queen's most essential, you know, parts of their career, as they were a band together with, of course, with Freddie Mercury as well. The next spot on this is again Queen Greatest Hits 1, the Europe most recent pressing, which is digitally based. It's because I do like the sound to some of it, but some of it, like I said, doesn't sound as I would have expected to, and it's also based on the digital remaster, which is widely being panned. So from that perspective, it goes on the 5th spot for me. Now on the 4th spot are the Red and Blue original albums. Now I have again the 2014 pressings, but still the original track listing and the original albums of the Red and Blue album, just because they do have a very good track listing, and I understand their role as being iconic for so many people, including myself, especially the red one. But again, you know, if you talk about a track listing that is all-encompassing of the respective band's career and of their most essential songs, there are a few things which are missing off of here, and you know, not necessarily justifiably so. They could have had 3 discs for each and would have made probably a better compilation even back then. So this goes at number 4 for me. Number 3 will be the most recent Red and Blue, because they did improve a lot on the track listing. Now, it's not, analog as this one. It does have its own, new releases, new mixes that some people like and some people don't like. But for me, this is preferred to this one, at least in terms of the track listing. On number 2, we have Greatest Hits 2, the UK pressing. I told you, excellent sounding pressing. The songs are all amazing from one of their most prolific periods, so nothing to say except this is one of the greatest versions that I've listened to, at least. And finally, number 1, I think the best compilation from here is the Beatles box from Liverpool. Again, it's 8 discs, it covers a lot of tracks, and it did a very good job at curating an almost perfect Beatles compilation collection. And I don't think this can be beat unless there's this version relaunched with a few more changes to the track listing. Short of getting the whole albums, this is the best that you can get. And I think also from a sound perspective, to me, it just sounded excellent. So this was about it for today. I do hope you found this somewhat interesting. I am very interested to know which versions of these compilations or other compilations from these two bands do you prefer, which ones do you have, and even which ones do you recommend, and please let us know about all of that in the comments. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope we'll see you next time.